Welcome to Reinventing Perspectives. Today we have a super guest. We have Merit Kahn here, and she is the CEO of SELLect Sales Development. She has over 20 years experience coaching and training entrepreneurs. We're so happy to have you on, Merit. So please just let us know what you're about.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me. I really always appreciate an opportunity to talk with entrepreneurs, particularly early in their careers when I can share some of the things that I wish I knew early in my career. So as somebody who's been working with entrepreneurs, professionals, sales teams, business owners for more than 20 years now, I find that people are so good. They're so passionate about what it is that had them become an entrepreneur. But one of the things that they're frustrated with is that they didn't realize that getting their good work out into the world would mean that they have to be good at business development. In fact, as good or better at business development part of running a company than even doing the work that they do. Because there's nothing more frustrated than having the guy down the hall do the same exact offerings that you have, but they're just a little better in the sales part than you are, and they're getting all the business, and you're like, what's happened? So I make sure that that does not happen to entrepreneurs who are really committed and doing good work in the world. And I think that's, something that has always driven me is I have a gift and I have an ability to help people do what they do. And that just gives me a good sense of satisfaction that I'm doing good work in the world by helping entrepreneurs who are doing good things.
This is going to be a great conversation because that's what we're all about here. And like you said, the most frustrating thing is having people who have brilliant ideas, brilliant products, brilliant services, really have a heart to serve, but because
Yes,
the packaging, the messaging isn't right, people with a fraction of what they are doing are getting all the business. So we know the frustration of early entrepreneurs. So thank you for being here, Merit. Now, Merit, I love your motto, which says, stop selling and start getting selected. Brilliant.
thank you.
Because you know how much early entrepreneurs specifically, didn't, if you're not trained in sales, that's the one thing that you're like,
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, the reason you have the opportunity to be an entrepreneur is because you are so good at what you do, and because of that, you build a business around getting those offers out into the marketplace. What happens is you take a traditional sales course and they teach you these closing moves, and here's what you say to close a deal, and here's what you say to get past a gatekeeper, and all these like moves and tricks and tips and slick things. Except that if everybody's learning the same stuff, then on the prospect side, it feels very salesy and pushy. And so then the entrepreneur or the professional who really who does, like you're saying, Priscilla, has a good heart, but just got some maybe bad training or some bad advice, they feel like they're always pushing and selling. And that's why we get this, this idea in the marketplace. It's like, I don't like feeling pushy and salesy and aggressive. I mean, who likes that? Because none of us want to feel sold. So you certainly don't want to be the person who is pushing your offers on people. And so our company name, so I'm the CEO of SELLect Sales Development, and we spell it SELLect because we're funny like that. But really that is our mission, is to have people stop selling and start being selected. And really that's what at the heart of our business model really sets us apart, because we're not going to teach people the closing move. We're going to make sure that people really authentically connect with their prospects, really are clear about who their ideal customers are, and know how to talk to them about the frustrations that they are having, as opposed to all of the features and benefits and bells and whistles of our offers. So it's really about Let me help you understand what's frustrating or challenging or overwhelming for you. And then within that context, let me share with you some of the ways that we solve those problems for people who are in the same boat as you are. And then if that conversation is a natural, authentic match, well, then of course they're going to select to do business with you. And our belief is that selling and doing business, building business relationships is really about a mutual selection process. I know very clearly who my best ideal clients are, and I know very clearly who they are not. And I don't make offers to people who don't match my ideal client profile because everybody's money is frankly not the same shade of green or whatever other colors money is in other places. um, but yeah, that's really what we're all about. Stop selling, be selected.
The way you bring it across reminded me of Steve Jobs, how they say when he began with Apple, he would give a list of the features and had a spread in the newspaper detailing exactly how the technology would work, and it flopped just because, not because it wasn't a great product, it was always a great product, but he wasn't answering those simple questions of here's the problem you have and here's how I can help you. And a lot of times as entrepreneurs we fall into that trap. Even in social media we fall into that trap where we're hammering people over the head with information and people just walk around, after interacting with that information, they still don't have a clue.
That's right. And I love that you brought up Steve Jobs. He's a great example of somebody who really looked, when you study his career path and when things weren't going well for him and how disconnected he was from who he really was at that time. And once he blended his real passions for design and simplicity and I'm just very Zen guy, and once he brought those two things together and really spoke to people from what made his offer authentic to him, as well as really tapping into what people really wanted and weren't getting anywhere else in the marketplace, I think there was this moment where my belief is that to be more influential with other people, we have to understand what has influence over us. And so I talk about that in my programs in a lot of different ways. But I think with Steve Jobs, think about how he really took in what had influence over him. And then he was really clear about that. And that helped him actually step into those differentiators and be infinitely more influential with everyone else in the marketplace.
Wow, that right there is enough of a takeaway for us to say, audience, you got what you came for.
Well, thank you. I'm humbled. That was I really am struck by that. Particularly when my work in the world has always been much more so about really helping people understand their own mindset. And I know that there's lots of programs out there, and we've heard, in fact, I was listening to a previous episode of your podcast, and there was a lovely woman talking about business mindset, and I thought that was a great interview. And she had a lot of really good ideas that made me think. And when I talk about and train people in what I call sales mindset, I've really learned to break it down into 3 different categories, because I remember I had these two guys in my sales training class. This has to have been maybe 16 or 17 years ago at this point. But I'll never forget them because they were so funny, because at that time I had a training center and people would come every week to sit in my class and, for a 90-minute session on basically sales technique, right? So it was very tactical what I was teaching at that time. And so these 2 guys worked for the same company. They were hired around the same time. They sold in the same territory. So they were selling the same products and services at the same price point. I mean, like literally, Priscilla, everything was the same with these guys. I mean, I even remember them looking the same. Like they looked like twins. And they sat right next to each other in my class. And and I would do some coaching with them, and over time, one of them, Stephen, he had amazing results. Like he would come in every week and be like, Merit, I sold this other client. I'm so excited. I've surpassed my sales goals. And I was just over the moon because now I'm thinking like, woohoo, look at what a great sales trainer and coach I am because this guy's crushing it. And then Daniel was the other guy, and he did not have the same results. And I will tell you, I really struggled with that because what I realized was I don't get to take credit for Steven's success if I'm not also responsible for Daniel's lack of success. Like, how could they both be learning the same thing and having such completely different experiences? And I'm so grateful that I didn't just take it at face value and I did a little bit of a deeper dive to find out what's really the distinction here, because that really expanded my thinking about what it is to be a successful entrepreneur, to be successful in business development. And I really had to look and find the deeper difference. And so what I had found at that point was emotional intelligence. And I studied that and I got certified in that. And I had both of these gentlemen do an emotional intelligence assessment. And that was when like all the light bulbs went off. Like they were so similar in so many ways and so uniquely different in how they were wired below the surface. So when I talk about a sales mindset, I think it's really three pieces. It's the internal mind, which is what we say to ourselves, right? So those are our beliefs. And sometimes we have beliefs about what is a lot of money or the type of decision maker we're comfortable talking to, or, what we're worth in the world, right? So we have to acknowledge and really flesh out what are the beliefs that we have. Do they support us in the goals and ambitions that we have in life, or do they sabotage us? And if they sabotage us, we can look at them as adults and say, you know what? Oh yeah, I remember when I thought, $100,000 was a lot of money. That was when I was 28 years old. Yeah, I'm not 28 anymore. Now I have a family. Now I have, things. I have bigger dreams. So I'm going to re-decide that belief and choose something that serves me moving forward. That's just one example. But the second part of your mindset is the behavioral mindset, and that is what our actions say to other people. So if you think about, lots of us have done DISC profiles, and we kind of know our behavioral styles, which are pretty fixed unless there's some major event in our life that kind of throws us into a different category. But how we behave with others says a lot to them about who we are in the world and the work that we'll do. And learning how to speak their behavioral language is a really important skill set for any entrepreneur. But the third piece of the sales mindset is the emotional mind. And so I think about that like the foundation of a house. We've all heard that analogy a million times, but if you're listening and you don't have the opportunity of a visual, imagine you take your hand and you spread your fingers out wide. And in those gaps between your fingers, if those are gaps in your emotional mindset, then all of the skills that you might learn, that you might try to layer on top, whether it's sales skills or marketing skills or anything really, I imagine those skills, instead of resting on top of a strong, solid foundation as if your fingers were pressed together and you were resting those skills on top, I imagine those skills sort of falling through the gaps of between your fingers. And then they're not as accessible to you as they would be if you had a strong emotional foundation to then build those skills on top of. And that's why when I work with entrepreneurs and business owners and sales teams, when I speak at conferences or I'm doing consulting projects, working on a strong sales mindset is so critical before we teach the mechanics of selling or before we put a plan together so that you're in motion on sales behaviors. Because without that, everything falls through those
I was
gaps.
so intrigued, but I was like, oh, but that I might not really understand what that means, and so I'm sure a lot of other people might not really understand what that
Okay.
means. When you say behavioral mindset, could you give an example of? Because I'm not familiar with the disc profiles.
The DISC profile is one example of an assessment that helps people understand how they behave and interact with other people, and also gives people an understanding and an awareness that not everybody is wired the same. So, for example, DISC all stands for different things, and there's some different ways that people label it, but it's the dominant would be the D, and that's very much like you would think of like as the typical CEO, right? Like high, like quick decision maker, the buck stops here, like that's how they operate in the world. And I might be an influencer. Those are going to be more like your typical salespeople, right? Uh, Outgoing and people, and they can talk a good game and all of that. An S is considered a steady relator. These are your people, like you want S people in your company. They're the people who are loyal. They don't like a lot of change. They're gonna execute on a strategy. Like they're just steady Eddie. And then there's the C, which is compliant, and these are going to be your detail analytical people, often the financial people in an organization. So if you imagine, sometimes I'll do an exercise with the group, and I'll say, okay, imagine we're planning a party for the company, and imagine it was planned only by the people in the D category, like the bottom line people. Your invitation to that boat party is going to be like, the boat leaves at 7, be on it or don't. This is what we're serving. You know, you don't show up, you're fired, right? Like that's the invitation. Imagine now the invitation was sent by somebody who's a high influencer. Hey, we're gonna have such a great time. Hope to see everybody at the boat party. We got music. There's tons of food. What are your eating preferences? We want to make sure we take care of everybody. Like they're just like, woo! It's all about the event, right? So you can see an organization would benefit from having lots of different types of people, but from an entrepreneur's perspective, we're gonna have one dominant style in amongst those four, but we're oftentimes selling to and doing business with people in all those different styles. So when I talk about a strong sales mindset, part of that is really being clear about your behavioral mind so you understand how you tend to see and operate in the world. That's going to tell you a lot about, for example, in sales, like how I might put together my proposal. So if I'm an influencer, and let's say I'm selling to a financial decision maker who is very analytical, I'm gonna try to sell them with stories, right? Because that's what would work on me. Except what they want is numbers and facts and figures and charts and graphs. And so if I want them to select me, I need to talk to them in their behavioral style language so that we have a good opportunity to understand each other. The bottom line here is it's not up to your clients to have to change to do business with you. It's up to the entrepreneur to understand every facet of their own mindset so that they can adapt to be easier to select by their ideal clients.
Oh wow! Thank you for breaking that down, because I think it really made it very, very clear. They always say know your customer and marketing, know your customer, but it's like an even deeper dive than that.
Some of the early advice I got as an entrepreneur was to learn everything that you can about other people, right? You're always, people do business with people, right? You're always going to be interacting with people. Sales and business is a relationship business many times. And I thought that was very, very good advice, to not just study my industry and my products and services and know all the ins and outs of what I offer, but to really understand other people and how they operate in the world and how they make decisions. But I think the piece of that advice that was missing was to make sure that I'm treating myself as the first person that I really want to understand how I operate in the world. And when I shifted that focus from trying to learn everything I possibly could about other people to learning everything I possibly could about myself, it gave me so much more confidence. It helped me adjust my approach, not in a manipulative way to try to sell someone by being something that was more comfortable for them, but maybe out of not my authentic communication for myself. But it really helped me distinguish like who I am in the world, how I operate, who I best serve, and then the right people were attracted into my life. It was pretty magical. So I would just say, yes, always, learn as much as you can about human dynamics, because you're always going to be interacting with humans, but study yourself as the first human that you really want to understand, because that makes all the difference.
It so well ties into everything you said before, because when you study yourself, you understand your differentiation. And so you almost automatically, you're positioning yourself separately from everybody else. Strategically, you're positioning yourself differently from everybody else. So someone can actually see, oh, what's different? The salesperson, that salesperson selling the same thing, but what's different about them? And then when you switch into, okay, what would my customer want to know? Are they more numbers? Are they more stories? It's a style shift, not a person shift. The positioning is the same, but wow.
Exactly.
Fantastic.
Unfortunately, I feel like I should call a whole lot of people that I trained in my early years, because really all I had in my toolbox at that time was, here are the mechanics of how to be a good salesperson. Like, here's the things that you want to say in the beginning of a call, and here's the good questions, and here's how you close it. And all that was all I knew at that time. And so, it did feel a lot of times for people manipulative. And I know that I coached a lot of people who would sell something, they would go out and celebrate it, and then the next morning the client would call and cancel. Because if you feel like you were pushed into something and you just kind of got caught up in the moment, you're gonna realize that at some point, and that's when you're gonna cancel the deal. And I'm not in the business of closing a deal and then having to cancel it. Like that is not a good idea. That's not a good business plan. So I think that to really make sure that from the very beginning, that very first interaction, there's really that opportunity for it to be a selection process, a mutual selection process, is so important, so that you don't have to deal with all of that buyer's remorse on the back end. It's just no fun.
Yeah, well, the thing is, for so long, this is what people have been taught and what we have been taught about how to sell and how to market. And it was very much just about the business and not about the customer.
Right. Yeah.
So it's great to have people like you now coming and kind of sharing look, there's another way to do this.
Absolutely. I think so. I think it all came together for me when I looked at the different pieces, because I was, if you think about mindset, mechanics, and motion as sort of the three things that it takes to be successful in anything, right? You have to have a mindset that you can achieve and that you're authentic to who you are and that all of that, and you have to have the mechanics of doing the thing. Uh, that's important, but you also have to be in consistent motion to get results on an ongoing basis. That's maybe, it's a challenge for entrepreneurs, especially if you're doing the work and getting the work, because you're going to have these ups and down periods, right? It's like, I'm going to do all this business development activity, then I'm going to get all these new clients, then I have to deliver the services that I've promised them, so there isn't the time to do business development again. And so it's this up and down wave of results and hysterical activity to get more clients, and it's exhausting. And then that one reason alone is a lot of why entrepreneurs leave their own business, and they're like, you know what, I'm just going to go work for someone else and let them bring in the business, and then all I have to do is service it because that's what I like anyway. But I think that's a huge missing, for the marketplace, because we could benefit from what you have to offer, and just all you have to do is just understand how to be more consistent in that motion piece. But I think, to get back to those three elements, mindset, mechanics, motion, when I looked at that as really a framework, it's really a framework for being open for business. And when I say being open for business, I'm not talking about, you put the open for business sign on the door at, when you literally open the shop. I talk about it from two perspectives. One is action, right? So being open for business is literally the doors are open. It's business hours. You are there performing your service. So whether or not you have a storefront, that's irrelevant, but you are legitimately open to transact business. But the other piece of being open for business, this open for business framework, is being open for business in attitude. And that is first asking yourself, am I open to doing more business? Am I open to doing new business and meeting new people and attracting my ideal clients? So it's really a mindset. But it's also, am I creating an environment, and am I creating a safe place for my ideal clients to really be open with me about what is frustrating and challenging and overwhelming for them, so that we can see if we're a match in the first place? So this idea, this open for business framework, is really about what I call the magic question, which is, are you open to? And you want to ask other people that question about, are you open to, finding a new solution to this problem, or have you already decided it can't get any better? And a question like that doesn't feel pushy or aggressive. It doesn't occur to your prospect as salesy, because none of us want to admit we're not open. I was reading this study. I'm sorry I can't quote the exact statistics, so you'll have to forgive me. I'm not a highly analytical person, but it was something like 90% of people in this survey said that they thought they were more open-minded than the average person. Now, I don't know about you and math in Australia, Priscilla, but that math does not work. Like 90% of us can't be better than the average. Like, it's just not even with new math. So it's interesting, right? Because we all want to be seen, and we all see ourselves as being open-minded. But if you've ever had a sales conversation, or somebody's ever made you an offer in an inappropriate way, like an inappropriate offer for what you need, as an example. I don't mean like an inappropriate way to approach you, though that's not good either. But if that's happened, then it feels icky, right? It feels like salesy, and you get that sense that it's all about the salesperson. The most important thing is you won't, even if it was a good offer, if they approach you in an inappropriate way, you're going to be closed-minded to and not able to even hear it. And I think one of the key distinctions in our programs at SELLect Sales Development is that we really work to make sure that our clients are preparing the mindset of their ideal clients to be open to hearing their offers, whether or not those offers are a match and they should mutually select to work with each other. That's secondary. But none of that is possible if the mind isn't open to hearing that there might be an alternative solution to what that client is going through right now that is causing them some sort of pain that they want to solve.
Even when you have a great conversation with someone, a salesperson, and you actually know it's a salesperson trying to sell you something, and it's something that you're not, in a position to buy at that time, or you don't particularly need, if the conversation is just one that feels non-salesy and like they're trying to help you, the next time you have a friend who asks you about that same thing, you're going to refer them to the same salesperson that you didn't buy from, just because the conversation was a mutual conversation.
Exactly. Yeah, you always want to leave people better than you found them, right? So, and I think that's also an important part of a strong sales mindset, is the understanding that we're really not a good match for everybody. But you don't want to do business with everybody out there. Some people are going to be really not a good match to work with energetically, or, they're just not a match. So why not put some effort into that mutual selection process up front and really get clear about, are we a good match to work together? Life is short. You got to find the humor, and you got to commit to working just with the people who are going to be a good match for you.
I know it's probably, you could write volumes on the mechanics of sales, but from your point of view, for an early entrepreneur,
Sure.
If you were starting out in sales as an early entrepreneur, what would you focus on? What would your daily practice kind of look like?
Yeah, the mechanics of sales are really fall into 5 categories. So the first part is investigation. And that's, like I was talking about, you want to investigate who you are. You want to investigate who your ideal clients are. What are their challenges? Where would you find them? How would you communicate clearly to them in a way that will resonate with them? So investigation is the first piece of the puzzle. Then you move to expectation. So you want to set clear expectations about the sales process, about your offers. You want to understand your prospects' expectations, but it's a real clear boundary. So, and I teach a formula. It's called PLAN. So it's purpose, logistics, agenda, next steps. And within that framework, I can use that everywhere. So for example, when I'm inviting guests for my own podcast, I will say, okay, the purpose of this conversation is to really share with our audience. Our audience is, sales professionals and yada, yada. And this conversation is going to be 30 minutes. And I'm going to ask you these questions, and I'm not going to, you can just run with it. And then at the end, we're going to do these next things. So I can use my PLAN formula in just about anything: a sales conversation, an interview, a conversation with my kid about, like, okay, buddy, we need to sit down and talk about where you're going to go to university. And don't worry, this conversation isn't going to last more than 30 minutes, right? So it's that. So you use that formula everywhere. The third piece of the mechanics puzzle is question. And basically, the gist of this is no prospect at any time should ever ask you a question that stumps you, not because you know every answer, but because you are really clear that the first most important thing you want to understand about the question that they're asking is why they're asking the question, not to jump quickly to answering it. And so I teach some questioning techniques that help you so that no question ever stumps you ever again, period, end of story. Like, never. Um, so that's a really important part of getting to the heart of what is important for your prospects. The fourth piece of the puzzle is qualification. This is the part everybody wants to get to quickly because you want to qualify or disqualify your prospects, which is why questioning techniques and setting strong expectations and being clearer about the investigation step, all that comes first. But qualifying, you really want to qualify people and opportunities in three categories. And that's, do they have a pain? Is there a problem that needs solving? If they don't have that, you really shouldn't go on. Like, what's the point? Um, are they the right person? Like, you have to understand the whole decision making process. So it's not just are they the right person, but does their timeline fit for you? Does the way they make decisions work for you? There's a lot to understand in the decision making process. And then there's obviously money, right? But it's not just money, it's budget, but do they have the budget for time? Like, if somebody needs to fix something by the end of this week, but really the solution is going to take them 6 months, they're not thinking clearly about what the right solution really will take. And so they may disqualify them in their expectations or what they can allow in terms of a time budget. So that's the fourth step. And then the final step is presentation. And this is where, of course, you're going to present your offers, but the key here is that you're only going to present to those who qualify earlier. And if they don't qualify, you stop. Like, there's no presentation that happens unless they meet the qualification step. So those are the five pieces of the puzzle: investigation, expectation, question, qualification, and presentation.
For sales, you just wanted to feel light and you wanted to work. Thank you so much for that. Now, Merit, I wanted to ask, what is the number one book that you would recommend on sales that you would say for you say this is much better than everything that's pretty much out there?
So my favorite book on sales is actually by Dr. Robert Cialdini. It's called Influence, the science and practice of influence. That book changed everything about how I thought about being more influential in the world and with other people, but also understanding what has influence over us, like we talked about earlier. I highly recommend it. It's great. There's a lot of science, and all the analytical people will love it, but it's also got great stories and examples that really help you understand why things like commitment and consistency. So I actually was so influenced by that book that that was one of the reasons that I really took a hard look at all of the mechanics of selling that I had been teaching for so many years. I think it was probably a decade into teaching sales tactics and training by the time I came across that book. And I really made all of the material I had ever trained audition to get back into the new program. And I took everything that I learned from that book and I infused it into the sales training curriculum. So when I teach people about making a presentation, when I teach people about the qualification step, we actually added a layer called commitment, which is all about making sure that somebody gives you that commitment, little commitments along the way, so that it's not for my benefit as the salesperson, it's for their benefit, that they hear themselves commit to acknowledging the challenges that are bothering them, so that when we talk about the solution, they've already had the experience of hearing themselves say, yeah, I'm really not committed to dealing with that anymore. Like, I'm really committed to finally having a solution to this problem. And I learned these little principles of influence from reading that. I didn't read that book. I studied that book. Like, I had a book club about that book. I went to a course on that book. I I led discussions with my clients on that book. Like, it's that good, Priscilla. Influence. That's the book.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that with
Absolutely.
us, Merit. Thank you so much. This conversation has been packed with value. I wish I could talk to you all day long, but I know you've got to go. And I thank you for sharing this great value with the audience. Now, for them to get more of you, Merit, they can go to meritcon.com/podcast.
That is correct. I'll have some free resources on that page. I've got a little a paper that I wrote called "The Dirty Little Secret Sales Trainers Don't Want You to Know." So that will be a great complement to our conversation. Something I think your listeners will really enjoy. And if you're interested in knowing a little bit more about the SELLect sales development system, we do virtual classes. There's online training courses. There's a lot of coaching support with group support or one-on-one support. So our team would be more than happy to work with any of your listeners. And we also do the emotional intelligence assessments to really help you understand and get clear about your own emotional mindset. And those are absolutely game-changing conversations for people. So happy to offer, if you go to that meritcon.com/podcast page, we'll put an offer on there special for your listeners too, to save a few bucks off of doing an assessment like that.
Oh, thank you so much for that, Merit. Thank you. Now, our final question is always on this podcast. What has faith meant to you on your journey?
I've been very, very blessed in my career and life that things show up in the moments that I need them. I've learned that worrying about things in advance of them happening or not has never served me.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that with us, Merit. This has been a fantastic conversation, and I'm sure people are going to get a lot out of this. And please have a listen to this, go to the website, take advantage of the resources, and do level up in your selling and help yourself to thrive in your business and in your life. Thank you so much, Merit. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your knowledge.
My pleasure. Thank you, Priscilla.